You are live.
Oh, hey guys. This is Dave. If you have any questions, put them in Twitter because I can't see anything else. All right, so I'm doing a midday work. I'm supposed to be doing. What did I say? What did I tell Grace? Oh no, I told you guys. A troll update since we didn't do our update yesterday, but I really have nothing for you, so I can't really do a troll update. I don't know where we are on anything. I can say that we're coming along on everything, and that you should. I don't know. Look at some stuff. I don't know. So I'm going to go over what I'm working on, in part what I'm working on, because I have like one, two, three, four, six, seven. I have 8 screens open, 8 documents open, and I'm working on 8 documents at a time, which is really not a good way to finish anything at any given point. And I was going to go over all of them, but I'm not going to go over 2 of them because it's going to piss Kent off, and I don't want him to get pissed off today. I'll wait till Monday to tell him about these things, so he can get pissed off on Monday. So the first thing I'm working on is villages, not villages, hamlets. It's going to be in engineering hamlets and small villages, small communities, and stuff like that. So this is sort of interesting. The villages, or the hamlet, I should say, is underrated or underutilized, I think, or misunderstood, I should say, in most settings. So, like in the pre industrial world, 95% or greater, 90 to 95, greater, depending on where it is, of the world was involved in agricultural pursuits. Basically, out of every 11 people, 10 were involved in agricultural pursuits. And those 10 supported that one person. So there's like this 10-to-1 ratio uh, of farmers to non-farmers. And that includes hunters and gatherers, those involved in husbandry and stuff like that. But this is a basic ratio that you can use. I mean, and it changes from place to place a little bit, but not significantly. I mean, if the land's really fertile or stuff like that. But most of the villages, most of the hamlets, uh, during the in the pre-industrial world, were between 200 and 300 people, 100, 200, 300, somewhere around there. I'm just saying, an average of 200 people. That was the size of a hamlet. That was it, and that makes up roughly 90% of the population lived in these small little communities. So what I'm trying to do is create a way to design a hamlet and for everyone to set up hamlets within their like setting in such a way that it mirrored reality to some extent. Now, it's not going to be exact. It's not scholarly. It's not intended to be. It's just to give you some information to work with to build these hamlets and put them in this, whatever region you're developing, whatever setting you're developing, and then have the hamlets be interesting places for the characters to visit. How to make them interesting places for the characters to visit, or at least people, and that'll help people in the that'll help game designers or world designers. When you're building a world, you have this region. Like if you have 1,000 people in a city who aren't like involved in agricultural pursuits, whether it's the nobility, the army, clerisy, or whatever, you got to have something like 10,000 people farming the field to support those 1,000 people. Now, so interestingly, too, so what you have is most of these people live in villages and then, or hamlets, I should say, and then villages, towns, and cities were really, really, really rare. And most cities were small, or towns, I should say. There's whatever involved in vocabulary of it. It's unnecessary. Uh, but 1 to 2,000 people were really rare, and cities were extremely, extremely rare. I don't have the numbers right now, but I think in like 1,300, there were only 10 cities. Oh, sweet. Hey, guys. Oh yeah, so fantasy grounds would be good on this thing. The so the village, so the towns are really, really rare, and cities even more rare. And so I've developed this thing where I don't know if this will work really well for your setting, but it's 10 villages to one town. No, 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 no. Yeah, it's something like it's a 10 to 1, 10 to 1, 10 to 1. Uh, Way to set up generalized setting up like any region or something like that. And then a manner to make those villages interesting. That's the one project I'm working on. The next project that I'm working on, I'm not going to talk about the ooh, what is it? I don't even know what project this is. Nope, not going to talk about that one. These two are going to piss Ken off, so I'm going to get back to them. This one, oh, this is my note page. So I'm stuck in this thing where like I take notes all day long, right? And I just put them on random documents and stuff like that. And I typically print them off so that I have the notes the next morning, or I can put them in the appropriate folder and stuff like that. I don't keep them on the computer. Well, I haven't bought any ink for my printer in like a month, so I have hundreds of notes stuck in one big huge file now on my computer, and I'm trying to divvy them up. But I haven't bought the ink, and I think I'm going to break down and buy the ink today. Uh, what's weird though, this is what weirds me out about this is like I looked at the price of the ink and I'm like, I'm not spending that for ink. That's just too much for ink. Not going to do it. Yet I'll go out and spend $80 on a miniature or miniature little castle type thing. I'm like, what am I doing here? So anyway, I'm getting the ink, get that out. But there's notes for all kinds of stuff up here to include corrections on the Arms and Armor book, notes on the Dragon's Crucible, which is now back in work. So there's the thing. I'm working on the Dragon's Crucible as well. And right now I'm writing a story uh, for the Dragon's Crucible. And Dragon's Crucible is the insane setting. So what I'm going to do with the Dragon's Crucible for the mythology of it is rather than give like a description of the gods necessarily, I'll have like a little like one line blurb for various gods, just their names. But I'm going to have various stories of the gods and how they interacted uh, through around certain events, right? Rather than give a description of God or what this God does or what this God does or not like that. All you'll have are these stories, and these stories are the same stories that would be disseminated in real world. And from those real world stories, people build their belief system or take actions based on the stories. Rather than me as a designer telling you how your character would or should react to, say, this god Bodir, I'm going to tell a story about Bodir and how the characters or the person running the game wants to create the system by which, or belief system by which the characters follow. I'm going to let them do it collectively because so it's like the same stories that we grow up with. We get to react to those stories and create a belief system around those stories. That's how I'm going to do the mythology for Inzea. There'll be a little bit of history about it, but the stories will not occur in any type of chronological order because they don't occur in chronological order. They're just stories, and that's what you get to work with. So I think I've sort of figured that out. Took me a while to come to that conclusion, but I did it. And then what is the next one? And then there's the world setting. That was going to be hard. The Denizens of Enzea, that's the monster book. I got to thank Jeremy for coming together on that and compiling a list of monsters that I've created over the years for the setting. And then, by suggestion of someone on the stream last week, I am taking two books that I started, two adventures that I started years ago, Harvest of Blood and Harvest of Sorrows, and turning them into modules or adventure areas for the Dragon's Crucible. Uh, and that was someone on Twitch suggested that last week when I brought the names up, as it was an 86th line. We 86th a lot of stuff back then. That got 86th. So did Dundred Spire and a few other things that I can remember, which I'm pulling out of the WordWorks uh, to bring back into production. And then here's another tale of one of the gods. I've got a great crow in here. A guy who lives in a tree, talking mushroom, and a lot of killing, a lot of angry gods killing each other. And then, anyway, the stories are fun. I almost wish I could do the whole world like that. Yeah, I might end up doing the whole world like that. I don't really know. Anyway, so that's what I'm working. Oh, and one other thing, got the other document open. There's the Dragon's Crucible, the game. So I haven't made up a name for the game yet. I wonder if I could name that Harvest of Blood. The Dragon's Crucible game. So I'm taking Castles and Crusades, the core rules for Castles and Crusades, and just like, I'm a tinkerer, so I'm tinkering it all the way up to where it's going to be sort of a different. I mean, it'll be the same thing basically, but yeah, I'm changing the rules up for Inzea, and that'll be a separate book, not necessary to play or anything like that. It's more or less a vanity project, I think. But that's all going to come out next year sometime, probably late next year. Since we had to put it on hold due to all the stuff that happened last year, that just kept popping our direction, and we've got another big project potentially coming up, which I can't talk about, blah, 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 potentially coming up in the next few months, which we will be very, very excited about. But it's another big project, so I'm already planning that in and pushing this off to late next year as a finish up date, and then wrapping up, selling my house, getting rid of my car, buying a backpack, heading out into the woods, and just living there for a long, long time. Anyway. So what have we got going on? What else have we got going on? That's about the state of the trolls. I don't know what anyone else is doing. I never really keep up with what anyone else is doing. I don't even know what we're really supposed to be doing. Peter's handling zagging. Grace is doing social media. Chuck is fixing everything that's broken. I think Jeremy's, we're almost done with the MT, PHB, and I think the Castle Keepers guide. So when we do the what is it called? The Kickstarter for it, all that stuff should go to print really, really, really quick. I mean, there should be a super quick turnaround on that. We're hoping for a super quick turnaround on that. Anyway, so there's that. That's today's work stuff. And then there's what's going on Twitter. Oh, there's that giant. That's Josh. Did that giant. That's really cool. Do you use encumbrance? Do you use encumbrance? Well, that opened a can of worms. Yes. Yes. So this is my current thinking on the whole Isaiah book is going to be like the epistolary. Okay. So it's going to be a collection of letters, journal entries, observations, stories, and stuff like that. So say like each page will have 2 columns, and there will be the collection of letters and stuff like that, just like entries from like scholars, travelers, and stuff like that. And on the right hand side of that column will be the notes by Photius, or not by Photius, by Besmir, and his commentary on those entries. So what I'm thinking, and this is sort of how I want to produce it, is to create the whole setting such that it's more storyboardish. I don't give like exact, like, here's this major city and this, here's the population point and here's this and that and this and that and the other, right? It's just like, here's the stories, here's the thing, observations about those places, and they'll be pertinent observations so that the person running the game has important information. I mean, all the important information will be included on the right hand side necessarily, but I want it presented such that the person running the game has a lot of leeway into extracting from that, because nothing will necessarily be true, and I will build in contradictions and stuff like that, so that the story itself becomes more like, like the real world. It's there's contradictory information, there's remembrance of the past events that never occurred, or the memories are just, like all over the board, incorrect or correct or something like that. But that's to give the CK a lot of what is it called? What would I call it? I mean, it's a lot of food to eat, basically, in a way. A big meal, or all the food to prep the meal, but you get to prep the meal as you choose. So you can pick pieces and throw away pieces and stuff like that. Novel board. But the epistolary, I really enjoyed writing the epistolary. And I think that when I sat down to write it in another direction, sort of like a traditional way that settings are written, I was having a very difficult time laboring through it. So I'm going to go back to the epistolary way and do it that way. And we may produce a few over the next few, like next 12 months or so, just as I write them, like this collection of stories from the mythology stories. We'll probably end up compiling them and stuff like that, but other informational pieces. And another thing, I saw these. Okay, so I've been posting these on Twitter recently, or I used to in the past. I found a few more. These maps, I'm gonna have to find one now. And it's maps of like mythical monsters of France. And it has like this, map of France, and then like pictures of all the mythical monsters, not all, but several of the mythical monsters in France. I found one for Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, Spain, yada, yada, yada. And so anyway, so the maps that I produce, there's going to be maps like that which again goes to my solid gaming too, where like there'll be map and set, and a picture in the map will be of this beast, right? A place on the map, so that everyone knows that's where the beast is. Say, for example, there's like a dragon, so on the map of this region, there'll be a little image of a dragon right up here on this mountain. And then there'll be a little story about the dragon somewhere. But that's all you're going to get. I mean, that's it. Does the dragon really live there? Who knows? Is it a dragon? Who knows? That type of information will be left up to the CK to extract as they want. But so that'll play into sort of like in the Iliad, for example, you have monsters like Cyclops, the Sirens, or whatever, all along his trip. Well, there weren't Cyclopses everywhere. They were only on this island. There weren't Sirens everywhere. They were on this island, right? Or, as he adventured through. And in a lot of stories, the creatures are like that. They're not everywhere. They're just like in this location. And that's not true for every creature, but you know what I mean, the named creatures and stuff like that. So I'm going to do that for the setting as well. And they'll have names and stuff and little histories and stuff, but they will be unique monsters. It's sort of like the Medusa. I always had this thing about Medusa, and I may be getting over it because I read an article the other day, a really good article on it the other day. So the Medusa, there were three sisters. I can't remember their names, and Medusa was, I think they were all three ended up with snakeheads or something like that. But Medusa was just one of the three sisters, and she was made ugly so that Zeus, of course, wouldn't do Zeus's thing. So anyway, but what makes Medusa unique is that there's only one of them. There's just one Medusa, but you have to make her powerful. so that not everyone can just come up and kill Medusa, or even make it three sisters or something like that. But I know that gets into sort of that etymology thing where you have the origin of the word Medusa, and it just refers to a certain specific type of creature that shows up throughout European mythology for like 500 or 600 years, or even longer, maybe 1,200 years. It keeps popping up as in mythological elements of mythology. Anyway, but I read a good article the other day too about Medusa, and it's someone doing something on Libya, trying to like do ancient Libya as a role-playing game or something like that. And they had designed a thing such that Medusas rule certain villages or towns or something like that. The Medusas were in charge. It was like a group of Medusas. And that sounded reasonable to me. That the way they portrayed it, or put it out there, sounded very reasonable to me. So I may be knocking back on a few creatures like that. But I do like the idea of there being very unique creatures for certain locations, and those creatures do not get to be replicated somewhere else. That's what makes them, that's their uniqueness. That's, they're powerful mythological creatures, and no one gets to screw with them. And then occasionally a character can come across them and maybe interact with them and defeat them, and that makes it all that much more heroic. Like when they defeated Smog, it's not like everyone gets to go out and slay a dragon. Only what's his name? Eomir got to slay that dragon. I can't remember his name. The guy from uh, the Bard. Anyway, can't remember his name. Bard, that was his name. Anyway, so he gets to slay the dragon. Like St. George gets to slay the dragon. It's not something everyone gets to do because there's not a dragon around every single corner. So they should be rare and wonderful events, not necessarily a dragon, but a named dragon or something like that that's been terrifying the kingdom for ages, and stuff like that. So that's my take on that. That's how I'm going to run Inzaya. I think that's how I'm going to do that. And then the rule system is going to reflect the setting. I'm working hard to make it reflect the setting, which is going to be a little bit more brutal, let's just say character death will be much higher. There's a higher probability of character death in Zaya than in the traditional game. And there was something else. What I like to think of now is actualization. The characters get to actualize. So I'll explain that later in some other thing. But that's the best way I can describe it now. I have such a hard time explaining rules. I still can't explain Castles and Crusades. I swear to God, I said in a game, I tried to explain Castles and Crusades to these new players a couple of years ago. And it was like, I was 30 minutes into my spiel before, what's his name, stopped me. The coach stopped me. Because I was making literally no sense to anyone. Everyone was like looking at me confused, because I'm going off on every of these tangents and stuff like that. And Dakota stops me and explains the game in like 5 or 6 minutes. And they're like, "Oh, okay, I see." I was like, "Yeah." So I need to get on some of those YouTubes. People on YouTube explain the game better than me, because I can't shut up about like, well, you can do this, but you also have the option to do that, and that. I can't stay focused on it in one thing. But anyway, so I'll try to explain that actualization later. But I really like that set of rules that I'm coming with for that. And I like the idea that I'm calling actualization. It'll be very, very up for people who like to improve in a very specific way. It'll be very good for those types of players. And I'm also ditching experience points. They will not come into play at all. So it's going to be an interesting, different game. I think. Oh, let's see. All right. So,
Just want to let you know we have 5 minutes left.
okay. So encumbrance, since that's that's a can of worms. Uh, yeah, I'm not even going to address that. If you use encumbrance, okay. So encumbrance, this is interesting. It's an interesting question because encumbrance is a style of play. Okay, and it works. Encumbrance works for creating that style of play. Now, I used to use it a lot, doggedly, until my players learned that they can't carry like a metric ton of stuff. I would make them do the encumbrance at the beginning of each game, and then they would feel the effects of that encumbrance right away. Uh, what happens after a while, though, is that most players realize that that's in the offing and they self-regulate their encumbrance. Now, I do as a player, I self-regulate a lot. I don't even track my encumbrance because I know when I run a character, I'm going to strip them down to the bare freaking minimum. Uh, and I won't, as a character, I won't be carrying around a lot of stuff. Just won't do it. Uh, but I self-regulate, and most of the people in the gaming group self-regulate, so it doesn't become an issue. And there are occasionally people, be like, "All right, where did you get that dagger?" Or you'll be like, "How many arrows are you actually carrying?" But see, so what encumbrance does is it creates another style of play because it's a resource that has to be managed. Like spells, spells are a resource that have to be managed. Hit points are a resource that have to be managed. Healing is a resource that has to be managed. Arrows then are a resource that has to be managed. Weapons, as they break or need sharpened repair, are a resource that need to be managed, right? So the resource management is creates a strategic thinking and a tactical thinking as well, because you can't carry 100 daggers with you can't do it, or you can't get to them that easily. You can't carry piles of like a magical components. You have to have an organizational scheme where you can get to them. So encumbrance makes the players think. It also creates uh, over encumbrance, that it indicates they need to carry less or somehow manage to carry all that stuff without being over encumbered. But it creates interesting situations, especially when you start to run out of arrows, run out of food, your armor starts to break down. Like a leg gets broken, you run into healing, you run into spells, or something like that. So the players actually have to start thinking outside their box of things, tools that they know that they have, and suddenly they're thrust into a situation where, oh, all my tools are broken. I've got to come up with something else. Okay. So in that respect, encumbrance and resource management like that really, 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 really can help a game and create interesting uh, things for characters, interesting encounters or whatever. It can make it more stressful, right? And that's what you want to produce, is a little bit of stress in the players. Now, a lot of players, after they play for a long time, know how to self-regulate, and but what they won't do, now I'll do it, and I'll do it intentionally sometimes, just to create a stressful environment. Uh, they won't regulate themselves down to nothing. They don't whittle away themselves to nothing. They can get close, but they don't whittle themselves that. They will. A player will never generally say, "Oh, no weapon broke in combat." Right? They're going to wait for the CK to do that. Now, I'll occasionally go that far. So in that respect, you have to keep track of this stuff. You don't have to. Uh, but I think it can potentially make for some interesting gameplay. I don't know. But I don't like sitting there, on the DM side or the CK side or the designer side. Coming up with encumbrance rules is really, really, really difficult, because everything is so highly dependent on the situation. And I mean, you think about that 100 pounds of feathers, 100 pounds of goose down feathers. Do you carry them? How do you carry 100 pounds of goose down feathers? It's really hard.
On that
Uh,
note, Are there any final thoughts before we finish up here?
Uh, yeah, here. Wait, what am I listening to? 380 megahertz. I'm beginning to buy into this whole 380 megahertz thing or 560 megahertz thing as calming sounds in the background. What is a megahertz? 936 hertz. I can't remember what it is.
We'll add it to your playlist.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got to start sending stuff for that playlist. I've found a lot of cool music recently. Uh, letting this stuff randomly roll through the music thing. Yes, no other final thoughts. That's it.
Awesome. Then we're gonna toss a raid to
39.
somebody, but feel free to keep talking while I get this raid set up.
Okay, 639. 963, 639. Oh, it plays on the same three digits, the 639. Three. Okay, so three is a really, really important number. Anyway, uh, three is sort of a base for Castles and Crusades too. Three roots, and then you have the attributes broken down into three sets of attributes. Then you have the 1218, which are derived from three. The difference, six, is three. It's a three base system. Am I supposed to say that? but but three is really, really important. Three is really, really, it's an important number, and it will show up again and again and again. That's
It's a
like a
magic
post.
number.
Yeah, it is. So I posted the other day. I was looking for like the best bell curve for dice, and the prettiest bell curve, the most workable, prettiest bell curve is with 3D10.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, it's a workable, it's the best bell curve.
Well, speaking of dice, we're actually raiding into Dice Legends, and that'll go off in just a few moments here.
Okay.
But hell yeah. Thanks for your time.
All right, no problem.
Thanks, everybody.
Out.